Yo, Atlas speaking, and welcome to the finale of What If I Was Reborn in Avatar: The Last Airbender as the world's greatest waterbending prodigy. Let the tale begin. Chapter 91. After leaving Ozai crushed under the debris of his throne room, I decided to leave the kingdom, with no destination in mind, but I knew it wasn't here, for now. I needed a purpose greater than just killing Ozai for the sake of it. Iroh was right, it would change nothing. A new Fire Lord would take the throne, and repeat the cycle over and over again, trapping me in an endless loop of stupidity. No, for this war to truly end, a cause had to end it, in the series. It was Aang and his beliefs that ended the war. And, yes, defeating Ozai had sealed the deal, but defeating Ozai wasn't the entire deal. He promised other nations without words, and sometimes with words, he would free them from the oppression the fire had made them endure. This gave the people hope, and for that, they fought for his cause. Well, I had other plans that included me killing Ozai. This world was weak, without purpose, without guts, without conviction. 3 nations, one of which thanks to their collective weakness of the world did not longer exist, were all against the corner, all by one nation, and the worst part was, that during the time that Aang was lost in time, they did nothing worthy of remembering. They just waited like sheep, patiently sitting, for the Avatar to return. This type of almost slave-like complicity was disgusting. They shouldn't depend on Aang or me for every major problem. This war shouldn't have lasted 100 years. The Fire Nation was strong, but easily beatable under an alliance, so this situation they were dealing with was their fault, which is why I knew what I had to do. I knew now what my goal was, to make the armies of the revolution, the armies of the people of this world, end this conflict once and for all. With no avatars involved, except for the part of me killing Ozai, but that was more of a commission for pushing them in the right direction. Otherwise, I was sure that if I didn't push them to win this on their own, Aang and depending on the mood myself would have to forever hold their hands in an endless cycle. And that wasn't what I wanted, not at all. I wanted to be free, not a slave of their weakness. You want to emancipate the world. Rava will be pissed. She has a thing for control. Very well, I will help you. Just to spite Rava, I inwardly chuckled, as if Vaatu had an option. Adorable. You are getting way too cocky. Perhaps I am actually rubbing off on you, Vaatu chuckled, reading my thoughts. It was bound to happen, pal, I laughed. What did he expect? I can't help but hang out with him, but I don't think I learned to be cocky from him. I was cocky before him. Taking a deep breath, I put my options in front of me to study. On one hand, I could use the Order of the White Lotus, manipulating them into changing their plans, but considering they were all extremely wise, they would see through my plans quite easily if I go to them, which made my endeavor all the more difficult. But on the other hand, I could create my own organization, something with a more chaotic tone. I think I know my decision. I chuckled. The Chaos Order, Ulaza POV. I couldn't understand why something felt so wrong within. Here I was with my family, my mother, who loved me with all her might, my father who adored me over all things, and my little sister who looked up to me, and yet all this felt like a dream. I felt something was missing. Ulaza, can you please take your sister to the park tomorrow? Mother asked with a tired smile. I have to work all day tomorrow, and I forgot I promised her that, she sighed. Don't worry, Mom, I'll take care of it. I smiled at her, putting my bags on the counter. I'm off tomorrow anyway, thanks, sweetie. Mom smiled with relief. Did you bought the honey dip cream I love? Dad asked with a smile. Like you would let me forget, I scoffed, handing him the honey dip. Ha ha, Dad laughed. What can I say? I love this stuff. Next morning, Ulaza POV, the bright morning sun shone high in a cloudless sky, meaning today was perfect to have some sis time. Right now. Busily scurrying through the kitchen of our simple yet comfy home in the town, Mom and I were serving breakfast. Babies, Mom called out, breakfast is ready. Is she even up? Mom asked, and I chuckled. What a silly question. What do you think? I smiled, placing my little sister's food on the table. Before Mom could reply, the tapping sound of footsteps came hurtling down the stairs from the second floor. And I turned to Mother with a grin. Yeah, like she would miss a day in the park. Mom sighed. Morning! My little sister said, tackling me into a hug. Did you manage to sleep last night? I did. I chuckled, eyeing her with curiosity. Why? You kept on sleep talking, something about Akira, is he? I couldn't hear what she said next, because as soon as I heard that name, my head started hurt, leaving a buzzing sound, and all I could wonder was, who is Akira, and why was I crying about his name? Akira POV, to make my organization, I would have to study the possibility of merging spirits with people to boost their natural prowess, a water spirit for a waterbender, a fire one for a firebender, but this was at best a maybe idea, for I would not force any spirit to merge, but that didn't mean I could not convince some to do so. This ought to be a fun endeavor, or at the very least, very chaotic. Chapter 92. After talking to Vaatu about my idea, he helped me to improve certain aspects of it. My original idea was to use spirits to help those I selected to fight for my cause, but as I had stated before, I had certain problems with forcing a spirit or a human to do so, but Vaatu refined this idea with the following. He gave me the ingenious idea of using people that no one would miss, people who under no moral compass would be considered human beings. Monsters so evil that death was too good for them, people whom I would have no problem using and eliminating, but alas, the idea did not end there. Vaatu had designed a punishment for these creatures that we were going to use. The monsters would only donate their body, since in the version of Vaatu the spirits would control everything, locking the monsters in a prison without exit, without escape. It was quite poetic if you ask me, prisoner of their own mind. So, now my new mission was to look for people like Ozai or worse, and, of course, finding spirits that would be willing to collaborate with me on this endeavor. Perhaps Ursock and Cheshire would be the first knights of my chaotic order. Although, it was not very clear for me if it would work with Cheshire since he did not have an element to command. His powers were out of any category, being along the lines of magic rather than elemental power, but even without an element, if he could manifest his powers in human form, they would make him an enemy difficult to defeat and entertaining to fight. So, in the case Ursock and Cheshire accepted, it would mean I had yet to find 3 other spirits for this, one for air, one for water, and one for earth. I wanted my order to be small when it came to my knights, 5 were more than enough. So, I had yet to find 3 spirits and 5 disposable humans. Prisons would make a great farming spot. The Fire Nation has many of them. If I recall you saying, I hummed, that seems like a good place to start. I nodded. So, how will the selection process go? Vaatu inquired. Well, I will pick those whose emotions are the worst among the worst, I answered. Only then I would be able to pick the right disposable humans. Not all criminals were monsters deserving of this treatment, and not all monsters were criminals, simple as that, though sometimes both lines crossed. Very well, now, remember, for this to work, we both must subdue the spirit of the person we want to trap in the darkest corner of their mind for all eternity with our energy, otherwise, the merging won't work as we intend. Oh, yeah. I almost forgot about that little detail, which reminded me. I would leave Ursock and Cheshire for last, just to make sure the process was safe for them before using it. The process of merging was both simple and complex. I had to imprison the human spirit while Vaatu would be doing the body-spirit part, switching the roles of control, making it a very delicate process. A mistake, according to Vaatu, could kill the human or the spirit depending on who made the mistake, therefore we could not afford any mistakes. Okay, let's do this. With the plan in hand, I began my journey, my destination, the most secure prison on the planet. Ulaza POV, I woke up in my bed, to find my sister sleeping next to me, holding me tight, all while briefly remembering what had happened hours ago. A simple name had knocked me down, but why? There was no reason behind such a thing. Why would a name would hurt me so much? It didn't make any sense, but still, that name brought a sense of nostalgia, which confused me even more. Who was the bearer of that name, and what did he or she mean to me? A part of me begged me to let it go, that it would only bring me pain, but another part demanded that I look for answers. It was as if I was torn between 2 sides. It was a complicated feeling. Are you feeling better, big sis? Key said, with a worried expression. I am, I smiled, patting her head. I just need some rest, and I'll be dandy. Was it my fault? Key asked once again, this time hiding her head under the sheets of the bed in shame. No, 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 I was simply tired. You know how much I work. It's nothing for perfection for me and my clients, I said with a warm smile, kissing her on the forehead. You will never hurt me, ever, I swear. Pinky swear? Key smiled a bit. Double pinky swear, I smiled, upping her offer. I double that. Key giggled. I looked at her, and with a giggle of my own I asked, how? With the pinkies of my feet. Key smiled. Well, I had to hand it to her. She beat me in my own game. Well played, little sis, well played. Akira POV, the closest prison to me was days away, and the one I wanted to go was months away, meaning I needed Cheshire on my side, but considering he was taking Sakura's family to the north, well, it meant I would have to cover some distance in the pedestrian way, at least until I was sure I could summon him. I think we can tame one of those bisons the anorexic bodysuit Rabe uses, as Vaatu said, trying to help. Huh, that actually could work. In Korra, those things were everywhere, but I have no idea where to look, I hummed. What about you, Vaatu? I dunno, one of the air temples, Vaatu answered, sounding unsure. So, the four corners of the known world. I deadpanned. Hey! I am trying to help. Not my fault those hippies had no concept of hospitality. Who in the fuck would want to visit them when you basically have to walk across the globe to see them all, Vaatu stated, and he was right. Who came with the great idea of having the temples so far away from each other? Chapter 93, Traveling without Cheshire was a time-consuming nuisance, but, for the moment, I had no other choice, which is why I found myself on a boat, one that I had stolen from the trading port near the capital. Inside the boat, I found myself with another problem, which was that I didn't know how to operate it. I didn't have the slightest idea how to do it, so I had to force people who knew what to do to help me. Thanks to that, I was getting close to my destination faster, and instead of being months away from the destination, I was now a couple of weeks away from the Fire Nation's maximum security prison. And since I would be confined to the ship for the foreseeable future, I decided to take advantage of the time and start looking for the spirits that I would recruit for this mission. It's time, I declared with a clear and decisive tone. Perfect, now start meditating. Once you're inside, I'll protect the body in the physical world, Vaatu declared with confidence. Without further ado, I allowed myself to be deeply immersed in my meditation, and little by little, I felt my body become not only lighter but calmer. I continued this process until I felt a spring breeze gently touching my face, which, considering I was on a boat in a windowless room, was, well, impossible, so with that little bit of information I knew I was already in the spiritual world. Carefully opening my eyes, I scanned the area as I reminded myself that without my physical body, I had no powers and that I should act tactfully so as not to anger anyone, as I would have no way to defend myself if that happened while I was in this state. The place where I found myself was strange and new, a place I had never been to in any of my visits to the spiritual world. Green plains like a soccer field, with trees of strange and impossible colors, but the most striking or important thing was the feeling of absolute peace that the place gave me, to the point that I knew that this feeling of calmness was not natural. I shook my head from those thoughts for the time being and stood from where I was, looking around, wondering where to start. The spiritual world was vast, infinitely more vast than the physical world, which could make my mission extraordinarily long or short, depending on my luck. With a sigh and a soft chuckle, I started walking in a random direction, as I wondered why my trips to the spirit world were so unpredictable. Aang always got where he had to go, whereas in my case, everything was random. Maybe it was because our symbolic purposes were different. He was order, and I was chaos, and chaos was generally unpredictable. I kept walking for hours in my search for companions until my walk was interrupted by a fox with wings that landed abruptly in front of me. For a couple of seconds, the fox just stared at me, his eyes shining with curiosity and fascination, mixed with caution and something else that I could not quite grasp. "A human, what are you doing here?" the fox asked with evident curiosity, and I could tell from his tone and the way he looked at me that he had never seen a human before, or it had been quite a while since he had seen one. "I have come for business-related reasons," I casually informed the fox, with a smile. "What kind of business?" asked the fox, cautiously glancing at me every now and then. I am looking to recruit 3 spirits to work for me, I replied, deciding to be honest from the beginning. It would save me some trouble later on. The fox sighed, his emotions shifting from simple curiosity to anger. Not many of us can leave, not since the Avatar locked us here, he said. This was unexpected and interesting. The anger he was emanating was not directed at me at all, which is a norm for me, but rather this hostile feeling was directed towards Aang. Or to be more on to the first Avatar, I noticed some hostility towards the Avatar. Why is that? I asked carefully. I didn't want him to take this question as me defending Aang. I just wanted to see him elaborate his point more in depth. Yes, the fox snarled, wings fluttering angrily. The spiritual world and the physical world used to be one, but he decided for us, trapping most of us here against our will. Not all of us wanted to be here for all eternity, and not all of us have the power to go out and see the world at will, and even when we do, it hurts if we stay out too long. And do you hate any other human besides that Avatar? I asked him with curiosity, although I already knew the answer, considering that I only felt negative feelings on his part towards Aang. No, before the Avatar, the world was one. We lived amongst the humans. Many of us protected the humans, and they protected us, the fox answered. Many of us loved the humans, and had no way to go back, to protect them, to save our mates. Well, let me tell you a story, I said with a smile, ignoring for a moment the clear hint of spirit to human relationships. I started where most stories begin, the beginning. Well, not the beginning, but the one he had to hear, giving an insight about the world's current situation. For starters, I told him there were 2 avatars now, which was something he took with a grain of salt, but as I continued with my explanation about my plan and my goals, I could see on his eyes, he grew more and more interested about it. But nothing was more fun than the expression he made when I told him I was the second Avatar. The nice and chaotic one. So, you say, you and Batu have a way to give spirits physical bodies? The winged fox inquired. Yes, which is why I need to find some spirits willing to join my organization. I already have one for fire. I nodded, with my mind going to my cat, and whatever Cheshire is, I chuckled. Chaotic. He is chaotic, not like Batu, but you get it, the fox smiled. So you need air, water, and earth, right? Yes, that's the goal, I nodded. Good, the fox smiled, and with a sudden movement of his paws that was almost too fast to follow, he destroyed half of the forest behind him with a mighty torrent of wind that crushed everything on his path. I hope that fills any requisites for the air slot. I am in. I have some problems to work out with the Avatar, I had to admit. I was surprised this little fox packed such a punch. Thank fucking God I did not make an enemy out of him. Like what? Killing him, the fox replied without missing a bit, his small and almost cute white form suddenly morphing into a massive black and red fox with 6 legs and 3 pairs of wings. I lost too much because of him, and he will pay me back. At this point his eyes were glowing red and his body towered over me, emanating raw power. We will talk about the details of your contract later on. I chuckled. Chapter 94. After Axis the demonic fox joined my group, he told me that he would help me get the other required spirits, with his sole reason for helping being more than clear, the fact he hated the first Avatar with all his might. Axis asked with curiosity, can you use all the elements now? No, I can't use airbending yet. There have been several difficulties so far with that element, I replied with a sigh. And how have you been dealing with those difficulties? Axis asked, staring at me. What have you done to master the air? What have I done to try to connect with the air? What a hard question. Well, I read about the monks and their... I stopped talking when I saw that Axis was laughing at me. I'm not surprised you haven't learned anything yet, Axis said seriously. The monks took over the real concept of airbending and changed it to fit their lifestyle, but air is not about peace and tranquility as they wanted everyone to think. No, the air is more than that. It's the freedom of life and death, the freedom in the destruction of everything and in the creation. The real form of air is absolute freedom, he explained. So nothing they teach works? I exclaimed with a laugh. Yes and no, Axis replied. The monks try to teach through altruism, which I personally consider stupid, but I can't deny that it works for some, altruism. I guess it makes sense, though I wonder, if the monks don't use the original source of their element, what is the original source? Was it just freedom? And the original source is what? Freedom? The fox smiled broadly. Yes. Freedom can be good or bad, just like all the elements of their original sources. Everything lies in the middle, which is the reason why many humans over time decided to change the concepts to feel good about themselves. Fire is passion, earth is will, water is creativity, and air is freedom. The original sources of each element are both good and bad. Water was creativity. Who would have thought? Haha. I guess it makes sense now why I mastered it so quickly. Wow, you know a lot about this. I've been alive for over 20,000 years, Kit, the fox said, winking at me. You learn a thing or two when you live that long. It makes a whole lot of sense, I said, laughing. By the way, I wanted to ask you, Axis said, his voice getting colder and colder as his body started to change to his real self. Why do I feel like you won't let me kill Aang? He inquired. My eyes were burning red and something akin to anger. I could taste the bloodlust crawling up my spine at this point. Wow, this fox is creepy. I like him. Well, Aang, while unbearable, hasn't really done anything to you. The first Avatar was the one who fucked up the world, literally, so I don't want you to kill Aang just because he's stupid, but I do want you to kill the guy who did this, so you can kill all the Avatars before him, I said with a wide smile. Elaborate, Axis said, relaxing. The spirits of the past Avatars are stuck inside him. With energy bending you can kill them, one by one until you get to the number one jerk, I said, clarifying my point. Oh, I see. Axis said with a smile, that's acceptable. As long as he dies I'm happy. What strong hate. I wonder who he lost thanks to the Avatar to get to this point. I'm glad. After hours of walking, Axis ended up bringing me to a place where I met a stag. A simple stag which, despite having nothing special on the outside, made me feel that I should be on guard in front of him. Faunus, this boy has an offer for you. Axis shouted at the stag, getting his attention. A human, in the forgotten forest of the ancients, what a rarity. Faunus said with a tone that indicated bewilderment as he looked at me. An offer, you say, Axis? Yes, Axis replied. He can take us to the human world, in exchange for us working for him. And what kind of work would we have to do? Faunus asked, as I wondered. Why was I being ignored? We would be his agents of chaos, or knights. I don't really know, but what I know is that there would be carnage and things like that, Axis replied with a smile. I see, Faunus smiled slightly. You know, if I had a watch, I'd be looking at my wrist really condescendingly right now. I said, tired of being ignored. My apologies, young fellow, Faunus said with a smile. I didn't intend to neglect you. It's all right, I said as I looked at him with curiosity, wondering what element was under his control. Question, what element do you control? My dear sir, control, no, I dance. With the earth, Faunus said proudly, and to avoid long talks about trivial matters, count me in, just like that? Without asking me for something like Axis? Something doesn't add up. Don't you want anything in return for your servitude? I had to ask. No, Faunus smiled. Then why? I asked him, why does anyone do anything? Sheer, absolute boredom. Besides, the idea of being able to dance in the blood of my opponents once again, it excites me. The stag I had seen a couple of seconds ago was no longer the same. His body had changed just like Axis when he got angry. He was taller, even more massive than Axis. Where his face was, there was now a skull covered his face with his eyes glowing underneath the bone. His coat dripped a black substance that looked like blood, but what most baffled me was his emotions, total and absolute madness. It was like looking directly into the abyss of insanity. Awesome, I smiled, wondering if bringing these two to the physical world was a good idea. Chapter 95, Faunus and Axis, my two newly acquired diabolical companions. They both had an aura that had me on an edge, mostly because right now I was powerless, but still, it was enough to have me ready to jump back to my real body. Their powers were so massive, I doubted I could win against them in their own element. Which made this all the more fun. I could barely wait to fight them and learn from them. Now, all we need is fire and water. Faunus said with a wide smile. I know just the fire spirit we can add to our little group. I already have a fire spirit, I reminded the demonic deer, who pouted in response. I'm not saying you should kick the bear out, goodness no, but the spirit I have in mind is a master of his art, Faunus replied. You of course already have the best of the best for air and earth, but why stop there? Just have 2 fire spirits and be done with it, Axis sighed. Well, if these 2 were a point to go by, I could already imagine the next spirit being another demonic monstrosity leagues above Ursoc and Cheshire in the power scale, though to be fair Cheshire was a hard cat to measure, with his powers being so weird. Fine, I shrugged. A most wise choice, boss, Faunus smirked. With that said and done, Faunus took us to quite the hell-like place, where flames roamed free and the scorching heat was ever present. The place was almost identical to my personal idea of hell. Agni! Faunus shouted, and out of nowhere a blast of fire landed close to him, growling. I told you! If I ever saw you here again, that I would kill you, Faunus. The massive flames growled in a tone that promised pain, lots of it, and I wasn't gonna lie, it was quite the impressive display. The fire was so hot it melted the very ground around the focal point of the fire at an alarming rate, turning the ground around it into lava basically. I don't think he's your friend, Axis chuckled, creating an air bubble around us to protect me from the heat. Oh, nonsense, we are like brothers that occasionally want to kill each other, Faunus laughed. I am nothing but your executioner. The flames shouted. Oh, you and your humor, Faunus said, purposely annoying the fire spirit. While I would normally love to humor you, I came here for business-related reasons. You see, this little human here is looking for the best of the best to work under him, and I know what you're thinking. What can this respectable human offer? Well, allow me to answer the simple question. He can offer us our freedom, well, limited freedom as long as we follow some minor conditions. Is that true? Agni asked. I can offer you a human body, so yeah, I answered. Then the furious flames started to become smaller and smaller to the point where there was no fire around, and where the massive inferno of flames at one point stood melting the ground on its wake, now stood a small and adorable weasel that basically teleported in front of me, extending his little paw, giving me a firm handshake. Then the name is Agni, boss, short for Agnitron, long for AG. I kinda expected you to say no. I mean, you seem to hate one of my associates, I said, pointing to Faunus. Oh, him. I already forgot why I hated him in the first place. Agni shrugged, climbing into my shoulders where he stood high, and shouted to the wind, onwards to victory. Do you also have a big form you would like to show? I asked with a chuckle. Oh yeah, Agni chuckled, Faunus has one of those. I forgot. Well, mine is what you saw, pure fire, neat, I chuckled. Neat indeed. Agni chuckled. Well, as we can see, I contributed to the team. Now all we need is a water spirit, Faunus said with his ever-present smile. He was starting to creep me out. Unlike Cheshire, Faunus had no emotion behind the smile he showed. I know one. She is one hell of a. Agni said, scratching his head in a way that denoted he was trying to remember. Oh yeah, she's one hell of a sea serpent. She will want to join. Oh, her. Axis chuckled. Leona is definitely a good pick. She is without doubt unmatched in the water, where she reigns supreme, but she will not come with us that easily. Nah, don't worry, I'll take care of recruiting her, Agni said, still on my shoulders. It was both annoying and oddly comforting to have a small weasel there. Oh, this will be very entertaining, Faunus laughed. And I couldn't help but wonder, was I missing something? Am I missing something? I asked, getting tired of the bit of everyone here having fluent conversations while I stayed out of the loop. Oh, yeah, well, you see, Leona has but one rule. If you want her help you have to beat her, so Agni here will have to fight her, Axis chuckled. Oh, well. Then Faunus was right, this was going to be very entertaining. Vatu POV, being a human for long periods of time was confusing. It was utterly disgusting how human bodies worked, especially the bathroom part. I will never be in the same chaotic spirit after that mess, and the problems didn't end there. Oh no, they just kept growing, like eating. It was such a bother having to eat 3 or more times a day. It was messy, disgusting, and it would inevitably send me back to problem 1, the bathroom. Everything about being a human was disgusting. I just couldn't wait for Akira to come back so that I could go back to binge-watch human tragedies on his head. I miss not having to eat, not having. Chapter 96. Agni guided us to the Sea of Lost Souls, where he for some reason started to breakdance until again, for some reason Leona appeared. I had so many questions, and frankly, I wanted no answers. Leona, looking good. Agni winked at the massive water spirit. Why have you come, Agni? Leona said, or demanded. It was hard to know for certain with her size and lack of facial expressions. If you don't have a good reason, I will stop the flow of blood in your body. Ah, she's so kinky, isn't she? Agni smiled, slumping his head and back against me. Honey, you know I'm all about for some fun, but now is not the time. That was a one-time thing. Leona shouted, and the water started to violently shake around her. But I guess if you really want, we can spice things up with the human. Wait, what? Hell no. First of all, no. Second, no. And third, how did this? I said, pointing between the massive water serpent and the little weasel. Work, sexually speaking. I am a selfless lover, Agni replied. Honey, the human said no. I tried, but what can you do about it? Why have you come here, Agni? Leona breathed out in annoyance. Come? I have yet to. We'll get there in a while. As to why I am here, well, this human is my boss, my brother, the father I never had, and the kid I never wanted, and he can offer us an escape from this place, Agni replied. What? I muttered. Oh, this is fun, Faunus chuckled. I agree, Axis nodded, wiping tears off his furry face. Is that true? Leona asked, and I nodded. Very well. What are the conditions? Well, like these 3, you would work for me, following my orders. Besides, not much, I answered. I will accept, if one of you can entertain in combat, Leona said after a few seconds of silence. Well, let's give this fine lady what she wants, Agni said, cracking every single bone on his body as he made his way to Leona. I will be back in a few. Kids, Mommy and Daddy are going to play, so stay put. Is it me, or did that sound oddly sexual? I asked my group. It was not you, Faunus laughed. Yep, Axis nodded. Good, just wanted to make sure I wasn't going crazy on the spirit realm. I sighed as I waited for the battle to break in. Ulaza POV, day by day, the voices in my head would get stronger and stronger, asking me to look for answers, to recover what is lost. But if I did, I felt I would lose something I had recently gained. I think you should go and find some answers, Mother said with a warm smile. Maybe go to the valley and ask the spirits to answer you. I don't think I need to, it's just a dream, I sighed. Ulaza, you will never lose us. I know you feel like you will if you start looking for answers, but know that I will forever love you, Mom said, hugging me tightly. All right, I'll give it a thought, I sighed. Akira POV, the battle lasted around 8 hours, and ended in a draw with both spirits being extremely tired. I had to admit, seeing them fight was a treat, like a 5D movie or something. Agni was a terrifying foe in battle, and so was Leona. They both showed immense battle sense and an immeasurably high stamina. Agni alone could probably level the entire Fire Nation without any problems, and so could the rest of my associates. Fine, I will come with you, but you will have to prove you are worthy of leading me once we are out of here. Without your bending I would squish you like a bug, Leona chuckled. So now what? Now we dance, Agni said back to his weasel from dancing tango around us, and I couldn't help but wonder, were all fire spirits insane? A dance maybe for later, Faunus laughed. For now, I think it is our boss' turn to get us out here, he pointed out. Indeed it is, I nodded. Very well then, proceed, Axis nodded eagerly. Give me a moment, I need to contact Vaatu, I chuckled, forcing myself into a meditation state to talk with Vaatu. Die bathroom. Die! Was Vaatu fighting with a toilet? You messed with the wrong entity. Now suffer the consequences for thy crimes. And burn! Vaatu, I called out. Akira, please tell me you are ready. I hate being a human. Vatu shouted. Were you fighting a toilet? I could help myself. I had to know. Yes, from now on they are my second nemesis, Vatu answered without skipping a beat. Now are you ready or not? Yes, I have them with me. Now what? I chuckled. They must enter your spirit, so that when you come back you have them with you, Vatu stated. Now, hurry up. He says that you all have to get inside my spirit, I told the spirits around me, who simply share a look among them, and with a nod one by one entered my spiritual core. The feeling was not like the one I had experienced with Vatu, this was more along the lines of feeling some extra weight all of a sudden. Now what? I heard Axis ask from within my mind. Now, I go back, I chuckled, forcing my spirit and the extra weight my associates brought back into my body. I opened my eyes back into the physical world, and I found myself inside an utterly destroyed bathroom. I'm going to assume this was your doing, Vatu? I chuckled. I knew he had some problems with the toilet from our last conversation, but this was stupid. The toilet melted down to a white-looking glob and the rest was broken beyond repair. You assume correctly, Vatu stated proudly. Chapter 97, I'm working on the ending of the first book. And that has stopped the chapter influx considerably. But don't worry, this novel will end this month and reform in Korra's time. For spirits, for bodies, one would think now that I had the spirits and the entire prison under my control thanks to Vatu who took control of it, the rest was easy. But no, it was like shopping with a bunch of sorority girls. That body won't do, no I don't like that one, or my personal favorite, that body is past the expiration date. We've been over these guys, you must pick a body. I groaned, as I pointed to prisoner number 96, a serial killer with a normal complexion. I don't know mate, I don't think he's the ride I want for the rest of my life. He seems like a sport model, but I'm 4x4 all-terrain, Agni stated. Not classy enough, was all Fauna said. I will not be in a body that has a penis, Leona stated. No, and that was Axis. We've been at this for hours. I swear to all the primordials. I will kill you all if you don't pick a fucking human. Vatu was near the point of breaking, and I could relate. Well my dear fellow, not all of us have the chance of getting the model of the century, like you Faunus remarked with a smile. Before Vatu or I could reply, I heard Agni pulling me that one. Agni pointed out to a small guy in a corner of one of the cells, taking the notes the guards had given me. I read about the guy, and Jesus, the guy was responsible for wiping a village out in the outskirts of the Fire Nation just for fun. Hey, I said walking to the guy, breaking him out of the cell. For a second he smiled and then immediately he tried to kill me with a knife he pulled out of nowhere, but unfortunately for him, I had expected something like that to happen, so I kicked his hand to the side making him drop his knife, and using water bending I froze him before he had the time to use fire bending. I was going to be polite and offer you a last meal. But fuck you, now subdue his spirit to the point you break it. Shatter his sense of self beyond repair, and let me do the rest, Vatu informed me being very eager to get rid of one of his unwanted roommates. Taking a deep breath I did as I was told and using energy bending to destroy his spirit. At first it was hard, but the more I pushed the more I could feel his sense of sense disappearing. Was this wrong? Most absolutely. Did I care? No, there was a reason I picked the worst prison in the world. These inmates were like Ozai or worse. Done! I informed Vatu as the guy stopped struggling, his body going limp. Got it, Vatu said, and seconds later I felt a chunk of energy move from me to the guy. Done. Well, this is comfy, Agni said before he started to snort inside the prison of ice I had made for the original owner of the body, meaning he had fallen asleep. 3 more to go, Vatu pressed. Mother of Faces POV, the strings of fate were being moved, and one way or another destiny would be fulfilled. But at what cost? I do not think this is a wise choice, I stated. What was my primordial sister thinking? I did not ask you if you thought it was a good idea. My sister stated, I am merely informing you how my plans are proceeding. Chaos and order have been separated for too long, and I intend to fix that. What will you do when the anomaly we call Akira finds out you've been pulling the strings on his life? I asked, How do you think he will react when he finds out that it was you who has made him feel empty, that it was you who made him break up with his mate? Do you really think he will follow along your plans?" "His compliance is not a factor," she replied. "You speak of him as if he had the power to oppose a primordial. He is but a mere avatar. His power and reach are limited, so I don't understand your worry, little sister. I might be younger, but I see what you don't. We still don't know who or what created him in the first place. You are playing with something you do not fully understand," I stated. "Should we be afraid of a random entity who made a quite defective human?" my sister inquired, tilting her head to the side. "It is clear we are superior. We fix him. Once again, you fail to see the bigger picture," I sighed. "Yes, he was defective, but he was the result of something we can't accomplish alone. To create a human we would need the involvement of all of us. And yet this unknown entity yet to be discovered created him, with faults and all. It is something we have not accomplished. Yet, mayhaps, you raise a good point, but as we have seen so far, this unknown entity cares not for his creation. We have all played a role in his life, for the better or for the worse, and yet the entity is yet to appear, so I'll take my chances," my sister started with a tone of finality. "It's out of my hands," I reminded her, "if this plan of yours comes to bite you back. I will not stand by you, as you wish." With that, my sister is gone, leaving nothing but a trail of dust and a growing concern on my part. If Akira and Vaatu discovered they were being manipulated, things would go downhill. "I am sorry for disturbing you, my lady, but the fire girl is here to see you," my loyal companion said, pointing his nose to the distance, and I could feel it. Azula was there, and she was remembering. How odd, but this could prove to be in my favor to stop my sister from invoking things we did not fully comprehend. I didn't want to meddle too much with Akira until I knew for certain who created him and why. "Bring her in." Chapter 98. It took me some time, but I managed to find a body for each spirit, which meant I was ready to start with the next stage of my plan, the revolution. With each spirit representing an element, it would be as if the collective support of the elemental countries worked together to bring Ozai down. When in reality it was me, shouting to the world, the Order of Chaos had been formed. I'll work on that title. "So, who gets to kill the Opai?" Axis asked, walking like a toddler that had just recently learned to walk. It was funny seeing him trip over and over again on his new body. "This will take time to get used to," he frowned. "This is remarkably hard," Faunus laughed, struggling like Axis but taking it like everything so far, with a big and wide smile. "But nonetheless I shall prevail. This can't be harder than playing the piano. There are pianos in this world?" "I suppose. I find it rather easy," Agni commented, being the only one that had taken to his new body like a fish in the water. "Good for you," Leona growled, face down on the floor. I guess being the only one without legs before this really affected her. "I hate this biped body. It's easy. Look, left, right, and then we switch it up. Right. Left." Agni chuckled as he broke into a dance around the fallen Leona. "I will learn how to use my legs, just to strangle you." Leona growled, annoyed at Agni's antics. "Thought didn't have any problems with my body." I chuckled. "Well, he did have a few with the bathroom, my nemesis." "The what?" my new companions asked. "God, please tell me I don't have to teach them how to use the bathroom." I had to teach them how to use the bathroom, and I am forever scarred by the horrors I saw inside that small room. I will never be able to erase that awful memory from my head. "I need another man in black situation," Vaatu demanded. "Another? What do you mean?" I chuckled. I don't know. Why did I say another?" Vaatu muttered. Let's forget about it," I sighed, but deep down I felt like something was missing, or hiding beneath a mist of misdirection. Why do humans produce such a disgusting amount of waste? Leona was not happy with her body at all. We need to eat, and for some reason our useless bodies can process all the material we give them, which turns into a disgusting thing that comes out of us. I found it fun. Agni laughed. "It makes the human body thing feel real, so hell yeah." I suppose it's only natural for humans or mortals of this realm to create waste, though I had expected them to evolve past that. Fauna smiled, "But is unimportant. I will master the ways of humanity is a day or two. What about you, Axis?" I turned to the air spirit, who simply shrugged. It's just something our bodies do. I don't have to like it, or hate it. Besides, I already knew about humans are their needs, so I expected as much. Axis sighed. As for them, he pointed to the other spirits, they never had much contact with humans, at least not to the point of living with them, so their knowledge is very basic at much. Basic for now, Faunus remarked. Wait a minute, this body is full of blood. Leona smiled, and immediately stood up from the floor. I can just bend my blood to move, that works, but I don't recommend it. I chuckled, and at that she glared at me. For a second I wondered why, and then I realized she was trying to bend my blood. Any reason why you are trying to bend my blood? I asked, narrowing my eyes at her. My blood bending doesn't work on you. Well, it doesn't matter. Leona smiled. You promised to fight for the right to lead me, so fight me. Oh right, I had forgotten all about that. Sure, I nodded. Mother of Faces, POV, Azula, or rather now, Ulaza stood in front of me, asking for help. She was starting to remember, but without spiritual help her memories were a haze, a chain of random dreams showing her a lot, and at the same time nothing. Oh, Mother of Faces, Ulaza kneeled. Please, help me. I can help you, but are you sure you want that? I asked her, if I help you, you will lose what you have right now. I won't lose my family, Ulaza stated. I know that, perhaps, I hummed, but you would lose a lot. The help you are asking for is almost toxic for you, if you can give it to me. I accept, Ulaza said with determination she didn't know where it came from. I feel I need to know. The pull is too strong. Perhaps it was time to move the pieces of the board out of the plan. A man brought you here, to offer you a life you never had the chance to enjoy. I said, showing her the image of Akira dropping her on the village. At the time, you were full of hate and jealousy, but I cleaned that away. I gave you the fresh start he asked for you. He is Akira, right? Ulaza muttered, seeing the image of the man dropping her past self. Did he love me? In a way, I nodded. Then why did he abandon me here? Instead of staying with me? Ulaza asked, and I couldn't help but wonder, was that Azula talking or? He is strong, probably the strongest human that has ever walked on the earth, but even someone with such power can fight what he can't see. I replied, life put you two away, and you could say I finished life's work. Isn't that what relationships are all about? Ulaza chuckled, crying, fighting together against what life throws your way. Oh dear ignorant child, I chuckled, not life, but life, the primordial of the living. Life is in spirit older than most, and with a personal agenda ahands, one that didn't involve him loving you, so he didn't abandon me. I mean not completely? Ulaza said with a little bit of hope. Look at me, talking about love and a guy I don't even fully remember. What a joke. No, he didn't abandon you completely, but he had no choice. I answered, life can control many aspects of the living, and among them is the mind. He resisted for long, even when his feelings for you were never certain. He resisted, but life knows how to break a mind, and Akira lost the battle. One he wasn't even aware it was happening. I knew my sister very well. I knew. She fed him on his fears, about the fact he would never grow old and she would wither down and die with time, and when that didn't work, she showed him how much of a threat was her to his friends. Life was sometimes torture, as death sometimes was relief. I don't think I like life telling me how to live my life, Ulaza stated. I know how stupid that sounds. If I give you back what I took, you must know, he doesn't remember you. I took away his memories of this place, but life took away your presence on his mind. For what Akira matters, you don't exist, I informed her. I will make him remember. I managed to remember a bit, why can't he? Ulaza stated. Very well, I nodded, wondering what my sister would do now that Azula was coming back to her chessboard. Chapter 99, with my order of chaotic knights ready, name still pending. I started to move with the next stage of my plans. I had to ensure the other nations came together to destroy the Fire Nation as a union, and 2. I had to avoid letting others know the Avatar, or rather an Avatar, had helped them, otherwise the cycle of uselessness would just go on and on. Of course this was easier said than done. While my new companions were very strong, they lacked the physical coordination to match their power. which would inevitably put them in tough situations, the reason why I had ordered them, well, almost all of them, to train their new bodies, and regroup with me on a later date. Agni was the exception to that order, with the fact he had taken to his new body like a duck to a lake. So where are we going, boss? Agni inquired. To the Water Nation, and please do not use firebending, they will jump at you if you do, I answered. The last thing I wanted was to bring unwanted attention to my group so early on the plan. Fine, Agni pouted, and I had to remind myself he was literally thousands of years older than me, and yet he acts like a 6-year-old. Not all spirits are as awesome as I am, Vatu declared, taking the opportunity to jerk his own ego. Sure you are, I inwardly chuckled. I feel that response is not sincere, but I will take it. I could almost feel Vatu narrowing his eyes at me. So, Agni chuckled, breaking my inner conversation, how are we going to go to the water tribe? If I recall correctly, humans are not fast travelers. That is true, I nodded, but I have my own transportation medium. I smiled as I proceeded to summon Shakespeare, who I assumed had already delivered Sakura and her family. Who is calling the all-adorable? Shakespeare said, popping into existence in a confetti explosion. Hi Akira, and hi. The ever-present smile of Cheshire disappeared, as he looked at Agni for a long moment, before he turned to me. Akira, can I talk to you for a minute? Sure, I nodded, leaving Agni behind to wait. Do you have any idea who you brought to the human world? Cheshire asked, his voice carrying more seriousness than he should be allowed. Agni, a fire spirit with too much energy for his own good? I answered, wondering where this was going. After all, I have never seen this crazy cat so serious. He is what we call in the spiritual world a demon, Cheshire stated. He is one of the 4 that brought the first great spiritual war, Agni the Unchained. He is the reason the Fire Peninsula is nothing but molten rock. His fight against Faunus the cannibal brought catastrophic changes to the spirit world. Oh, well, ain't this an uncomfortable moment? I see, I hummed, trying to think how to break the fact I had probably brought all of those so-called demons. While the demons of the spirit realm are far from the most powerful spirits in existence, like Vatu or Rava or the primordials, they are very dangerous. Shakespeare continued, they were all locked in a prison of sorts inside the spirit world. Axis the Wrathful, Faunus the Cannibal, Leona the Lustful, and Agni the Fireborn, or the Unchained, titles vary depending on the times. Well, I guess this is the moment where I tell you. I brought them all. I smiled. You what? Cheshire asked, after a long second of silence. You what? Don't worry, I have everything under control. If they misbehave, I will send them back to the spirit world, Vatu, and I have the keys to their freedom or destruction. I placated the enraged cat, but I'll be honest. I did not expect them to have such fame. I mean, they seem a bit quirky, but not all that scary, except for Faunus. He gives me the creeps, with that emotionless smile he always wears. Fine. Shakespeare sighed, if Vatu is with you on stopping them, they can't do much. Hell yeah they can't, Vatu agreed, and I couldn't help but notice he was happier than usual, and before you ask, I am happier than usual. You made me feel grateful to not have a body like yours. Humans are disgusting creatures. I find their needs utterly. I guess that explains why he is less edgy. Vatu says he is in Azula POV. It was different to be me. After not being me for a while, I felt new, but old. The same but different. At least something was clear. My goals were different. I didn't want to be the Fire Lord any longer, nor I wanted to obey the idiot of a father I had. I wasn't even sure I wanted to be with Akira right now. I needed to be sure of our love. My love for him wasn't an emotional drug that I attached to because no one before him showed me what it felt like to be loved and not feared. No, my goal was very clear now, and it was to stop life from messing with our lives. Primordial or not, I wasn't going to let someone dictate my life, not any longer. Besides, the Mother of Faces had been very clear, primordials can't interfere as much, being the reason why life had been manipulating Akira for years, without him knowing. Her control over Akira was subtle but strong, and one that I was going to shatter, showing life that no matter how powerful you think you are, no one messes with Azula and gets out unscathed. This should be interesting. I chuckled, as my eyes rested on the village far away, where I had been living for the last months, wondering if I would be able to keep the promise I made to Key. What a weakling I have become, I smiled. But I suppose some weaknesses are worth having. Chapter 100. It took Shakespeare 2 weeks to take us to the water tribe, reluctantly might I add. He was unsure the spirits I had brought were going to keep their word, but in the end accepted, knowing Vaatu would support me if they stepped out of place. "Hi, you," I waved at the water princess, who seemed to be angry at me as she walked, or rather stomped her way at me from the gates of the city to my ride. "Shakespeare, is there something I should know or—" I was met with a slap. "Oh, that gotta hurt," Agni chuckled. "Is she your mate?" "If so, good. I also like them feisty," he added with a suggestive move of his eyebrows. "What were you thinking?" "You hissed, you went and attacked the Fire Lord, didn't kill him, and revealed your real identity with your connection to us, and to top that you told him you killed his daughter, the one you dated. Do you have any idea what my father will do to you?" "Hi, what? Ozai had a daughter, and I dated her?" I remember attacking him, but I don't remember telling him from where I was, and what was that about me dating him?" "Don't play dumb with me, You stopped for a second, looking at my face, her expression turning from angry to concerned. "Azula?" "The Fire Princess." "I have no idea who you are talking about," I shrugged. "Was she trying to troll me dating?" "I haven't dated anyone in the Avatar universe." Agni approached me, narrowing his eyes at me into a thin line. "I smell amnesia, or quesadillas, one of the two." "Probably quesadillas. Did you hit your head or something?" You inquired, with concern. "What's that all about him hitting his head?" Sakura inquired, walking towards me. "He doesn't remember Azula or dating her, or killing her," you answered for me. "Azula this. Azula that. Who the fuck was Azula?" "Talk about getting over a breakup quickly," Sakura mused with a worried look, "but it is worrying. We will have to deal with this in another location." You sighed. "Remember Dad wants to arrest Akira for questioning." Sakura nodded at that. I think why can't I remember where I heard that name?" Vaatu growled. "Halt! You are under arrest. On the grounds of treason." A soldier shouted, running out of the gates of the city towards me, with a squadron behind him. But I simply couldn't move. That name, that kindled nothing within me, had me on a trance, feeling a sense of déjà vu. That made no sense. "Azula." I was so out of focus that I failed to notice you was trying to drag me away from the soldiers. "All right, it seems the boss is having a crisis," Agni chuckled, jumping in front of me. "Now, if anyone here wants to touch boss, they will have to go through me." I said halt. A soldier shouted, throwing an icicle at me, one that melted before it even arrived at its target, courtesy of Agni. "I think you overglorified goldfish didn't understand me. If anyone moves, even an inch to touch the boss, I will." By this point fire was raging around him in massive quantities. "Kill you all, no hard feelings, but it's my job." "No killing!" You shouted. "Sorry, doll, but you ain't my boss," Agni chuckled, "but feel free to try and stop me. I won't bite ya." "Agni, don't kill them." I managed to articulate, wondering who the fuck was Azula, to have such a strong impact in me. Azula POV, the Mother of Faces, had been very cryptic about what life had planned for Akira, except for the fact chaos and order would soon reunite. Now, going off that, I could only assume two things, based on my very recent knowledge about the fact there are two avatars in the world, and that their elemental powers come from spirits. I had but one guess. If Akira represented chaos, then Aang represented order, meaning life wanted them together somehow to restore the balance of things. The Mother of Faces said she wants to bring the spiritual order back to how it was, whatever that is, and Aang and Akira are essential for that to happen. Not on my watch, I inwardly chuckled, wondering how bad would life feel after her plans were utterly destroyed by a human. Is not often a human fucks with life, like Akira would say. But to fuck with life, I had to find Akira first, and help him remember me, which once again, according to the Mother of Faces, would set on a chain effect, freeing him of her control. Knowing Akira, He would probably go right back to the Northern Water Tribe. His reasons? Various but unimportant. This gives a whole new meaning of life is hard. I chuckled, wondering what was next after freeing Akira of her grasp. Was within our power to kill or hurt a primordial? If not, then what? I suppose one problem at a time. Zuko POV, Azula was dead, and I had to admit I was confused. A part of me was angry and demanded that I track Akira down to deliver justice. But another part of me couldn't help but consider Akira a very possible fact. What if he killed her in an act of self-defense? Azula was not easy to handle when mad. It mattered not now at least. With Azula dead, my uncle gone, and father wounded, I was unsure what to do. Stay here and fight for my father, or go out, help the Avatar and fight for my nation. Was me staying here a wise choice? Was obeying my father honorable? I think I finally understand what you wanted to show me, uncle. I sighed. All this bloodshed, all for a throne, one that drove Azula madness, and it did with my father. I was such a fool. You generally are, I snorted, as she entered my room. So, why are you a fool, at this specific moment? I was unsure if telling her I was planning or thinking of leaving was the best. You are leaving, I stated, with a cold expression. How did she get that so fast? With just a look, I can see it in your eyes. And tell me, did you plan on telling me? I haven't decided anything yet, I answered. I don't know if I should leave or stay. The answer is simple. I know it, but it is hard to accept it. That's usually the thing with life-changing choices, I shrugged. Chapter 101. I lost consciousness, and I had no idea why. One moment I was talking with you, then I heard that name that had no meaning to me and, like magic, I was clutching to my head. And now I was lost in my mindscape. I wonder why the inside of my mind is so white. I don't think it's magic, Vaatu commented, appearing inside my mindscape with a frown. Oh, hello Vaatu, I sighed, not expecting the spirit to pop into my mind, literally. This is odd. Very odd, and I don't like it, Vaatu stated, his tone carrying more weight than usual. What? I asked with concern. The fact I lost consciousness after hearing a name that I thought had no meaning to me, or the fact that everyone else seems to remember something we don't? I added. I told you before, humans don't forget things, memories last forever, and before you come and say, some humans do forget things, they don't. It's simply that sometimes the memories are not as easy to access as they used to be, and they can't see them, but even then the memory is there. But that's not the case with you, Vaatu sighed. I can't find a large portion of data in your brain. Is as if something or someone had ripped a chunk of information from your brain, so Azula was really a thing. That doesn't sound good, it doesn't, Vaatu growled. The worst part of this is that whoever messed with your mind, messed with mine. I tried to restore your memory with mine, but it was the same deal, and you spirits never forget, right? I asked. I remember the day I came into existence, Vaatu scoffed. Forgetting something is an impossibility. Besides, missing data should not be the case. If we didn't remember, the memory at best should be a blurry, not like this, not missing. Any idea how to fix it? I asked, wondering who did this to us. I mean, one thing was to affect me, but to affect Vaatu, that was an entirely different matter. Whoever did this was strong. None at the moment, but now that I'm aware someone has been messing with our heads, they won't be able to do so again, Vaatu declared, burning with determination. I think we can rule humans out of the who did this. I chuckled. There is no human capable of such a feat anyway. That much is true, Vaatu nodded, which only leaves spirits as our suspects. And considering my ranking among them, the list is not that vast. Do you think it was one of those turtles, you know, the ones you call the ancient ones? I asked, and Vaatu shook his head. No, they never interfere. Vaatu stated. The primordials, on the other hand, would fuck our minds if it fit their plans. Can we do anything against them? The primordials sounded like forces we could not hope to match, which put us in a difficult situation. I mean, how do you deal with the equivalent of a god in this world? Well, I know I can't, alone at least, Vaatu sighed, his voice almost hurting for admitting the fact he couldn't face them alone, but together we might stand a chance. If we don't, we can always befriend one of them and ask them for help. Depending on who fucked with us, we might have a chance to make alliances with others. So now the name of the game is finding who did this. Alright, I chuckled. Now, can you wake me up? Floating inside my mind is as boring as it sounds. You are floating in my room, which happens to be your mind. Do not insult my living arrangements, toilet user. Vaatu growled, showing I had touched a nerve with that comment. Sorry? I was not sure if this deserved an apology or not, but when unsure just say sorry. And about waking you up. I can't, your mind is trying to heal itself, so, you are stuck here while my room recovers. So, wanna watch some movies? Vaatu offered. Sure. I nodded. UPOV, had I done this? One moment Akira was standing in front of me, the next he was on the ground unconscious. Had I pushed him to that state? How is the boss? Agni, the weird firebender Akira had brought with him, asked. He is fine, unconscious but fine, I answered. I don't understand, he never gets down. I always saw him so, invincible, Sakura muttered. I suppose this is proof that he is human. I chuckled, begging the spirits to help him. Azula POV, I was but a few days away from my destination, and I had to admit, I had a tingly feeling inside my bones, and it wasn't so much the fact I was meeting with Akira once again, no. It was the fact I was messing with life and her plans. Showing the world that even primordial beings can't mess with me. I wonder what Akira will do once he finds out. I giggled in anticipation, wondering who he would declare war on, or would he outright try to kill the embodiment of life. I suppose any option leading to life's demise is an acceptable option, and as long as I get it, participate. I am good either way. I'm good as long as I get to enjoy my revenge. The first firebender to burn life itself. I like that, I smirked, pleased at the thought. Akira POV, when Vaatu offered me to watch a movie, I did not expect him to pop a movie theater into existence inside my mind, aka his room. The place even had popcorn and sodas, literally a fucking complete and functional movie theater. I personally recommend the caramel popcorn, which is very good in this theater, Vaatu said, with a bag of said popcorn. And the only thing I could wonder was, what did he mean by this theater? Chapter 102, Time within the mind was a rather intricate thing. Hours seemed like seconds, seconds seemed like hours, in short nothing made sense. But I suppose not everything is bad. My mind apparently has arcades, movie theaters, and many bookstores. You are about to woke up, Vaatu commented, stopping the Matrix marathon he was forcing me to watch. Be careful. We don't know who did this to us, so we must be alert at all times. I fixed your fragile human mind, so that you don't lose consciousness every time you hear that name. Got it, I nodded. And if you want, I'm opening a new arcade next week, so hit yourself and have some fun. Vaatu smirked. Now be gone, this is private property after all, haha. I laughed. Don't trash the place too much. I need it. As I said my goodbyes, I felt something pulling me out of my mind, like a tug to something I couldn't point out directly but I was sure was within me. Akira. With my eyes closed I felt the concerned tone Sakura was carrying within her voice. I'm up, I muttered. Oh, thank the spirits, you breathed out, hugging the crap out of me. I blinked away the lingering haze of my sleep away, groggily sitting up. It felt like I had slept for days. How long was I out? 3 days, Agni chuckled, almost like a princess. I almost kissed you twice, but these two didn't let me. He pointed to you and Sakura. Thank God you didn't let him, I chuckled. You're lost. I'm a great kisser, Agni said, feigning to be hurt by words. I'm sure you are, I chuckled. So, are you okay now? You inquired, a worried frown coming to life on her face. Yes, I nodded, well, kinda. Vaatu helped me notice the problem. Apparently, I have a chunk of my memory missing, and that part you're missing is your time with Azula. Sakura pointed out, the question is, who did this? I doubt you got this condition naturally, and considering amnesia doesn't affect a singular topic, it almost seems like an attack. It was an attack, I confirmed. Vaatu and I are operating under the assumption it was one of the primordials, as they are the only ones capable of doing such thing without Vaatu noticing right away. You pissed a primordial, mate? Agni laughed, and here I thought things were going to get boring with you. Glad to exceed your expectations, I chuckled. And, can you beat them? Sakura inquired. I don't know, I said, unsure. I mean, they are supposed to be the strongest beings in creation, so not sure I can, but I'll figure something out. Maybe you can get Moon Girl to help you, Agni offered. The primordials are indeed the strongest among us, but they are not unbeatable. If you destroy their realms or mess with them, they get weaker. Let's say, you threaten to kill half of humanity with something that would highly affect life and her power, but it would boost kindred on power. You get me? Agni asked. So, if I couldn't beat them, I could attack their realms. Brilliant. I see what you mean and I like it. Azula POV, the Northern Water Tribe, a place I would rather die than to live in. I might not be interested in the stupid war my ancestors started, but a girl has to have some standards, and snow everywhere doesn't fit mine. But then again, I suppose I could be more lenient with the place. I wasn't here for vacation purposes. I was here to retrieve the idiot of an ex I have, so that we could both kill life with fire, lots of it. Hi, honorable guard, I said, as I approached a guard in the city with my most innocent face. I am looking for a friend of mine. The guard looked at me and smiled. Gullible idiot. Sure, do you have his name? I said he was my friend. What kind of idiot doesn't know the name of his own friends? Akira. As I said that, the guard tensed up and moved to apprehend me. Big mistake. That earned him a broken arm. I will assume that was an ill-advised attempt to knock me out, and I will also assume you know about Akira, so I'll be brief. Tell me where he is, or I will gouge your eyes with the icicles forming on the wall behind you. Your choice. It took the guard a few seconds to register my threat before he willingly opened up about the information I required. Apparently, Akira was now deemed a traitor for the fact he dated me, a bit of harsh punishment if you ask. If anything, dating me proved he had superior taste when it came to women. Thanks, I smiled at the guard, knocking him out with a kick to his throat. So, you are a fugitive now. I always knew I would end up dating a bad boy. What I didn't know was that I would be the one to make him a bad boy. I giggled. I wonder how Zuzu is taking my death. A very stupid question. He is probably dancing on my grave. Stop right there, young lady, a man demanded. He was old, almost like my uncle, probably more. I can't ever tell when they reach a certain age. While I would love to humor you, I have things to do, and none of them is wasting my time with you. I winked at the old man, analyzing the threat in front of me, his posture, the air he gave. There was no doubt he was a bender. Even now the position of his feet were supporting a defensive stand against any attack. What is your name, young lady? The old man asked with a frown, showing he was not about to let me go. It's a bit rude to ask that when I don't even know who you are, I pointed out. My name is Paku, and you nameless lady are under arrest, Paku stated. That's if you managed to keep up, old man, I smirked. Chapter 103. I stared at the old man in contemplation. If my intel was correct, he was the greatest waterbender this side of the world had, and considering where I was, I had to be careful. He had the terrain. The area where we were was wide enough for the two of us to fight, but not wide enough to avoid getting some unwanted attention. If I limited myself to hand-to-hand combat, I would inevitably be captured, but would have a higher chance to escape later on. On the other hand, if I went all out and somehow managed to lose, my chances of escaping would be close to none. That stance. You are a firebender, are you? His face was scrunched up in anger. So much for option A. What a perceptive old man, I chuckled, keeping my eyes fixed on his legs, the best body parts to observe for giveaways to tell when a waterbender was about to attack. Very well. Paku sighed, and with a swift move of his hand, an ice pillar formed beneath me. I jumped right on time, using the pillar as a platform, while taking the opportunity to throw a few short but precise attacks at him. The easiest way to win a battle against a waterbender is to disturb their flow, no dangerous attacks. Normally this would be easy, but fighting a grandmaster and disrupting their flow can be hard, or in some cases impossible. Blue fire. You are Azula, Paka commented, calmly walking towards me. What can I say? I'm a girl, and I like matching things, like my name and the color of my fire. I smiled, buying time as I tried to find a plausible escape route. Fighting this old man would take too much time, and if I made even one mistake would lead to imprisonment, so the best path for me right now was to escape and continue with my mission. But knowing this man, and my reputation, the chances of that happening on its own were slim, so plan B it was, dodging his attacks while keeping his attention on me, and that way moving the battle unknowingly to a civilian-populated area. But not any civilian area, one with a lot of stakes. Looking for an escape? Paka said, narrowing his eyes at me. In your file, it says you are not one to run from a challenge. He was trying to weaponize my pride. Clever, but even back then it wouldn't have worked. Oh well, you know how trendy we girls are. I rolled my eyes at him, dodging his attacks one after the other. One day I like this, the other I like that. Who knows, maybe I will not find you annoying in a week. Cross your fingers. Your attempt at humor is depressing, Paka stated, creating a water whip on his right hand. I will end this sad show now, he added, bringing his arm down with thunderous strength. Adorable, I mocked, burning his attack away into a steamy explosion, but inefficient. You can't win by simply dodging, Paka stated. I know, normally that would be the case, but considering how old you are, I think there is a chance you will die while I dodge one of your attacks. I smirked, pointing to my watch. The clock is ticking. I have what you lack, time. Hilarious, Paka said, no humor behind his tone, but you will not escape nor outlive me on this battle. It seems old age helps in certain aspects, but no matter how wise and strong an old man is, it's still an old man. I laughed, pointing to my right. Does this place look familiar? What are you? Paka's eyes went wide and I smiled. Is this the moment you find out you are senile? I smirked. Now, allow me to present you with the options you have at hand. You can 1. Let me go, or 2. See how every little kid in the school district burns while we fight. You could probably stop my fire, but how good are you at stopping lightnings? Now all he had to do was take the bait, and let me go. You are as crazy as they say. Paka snarled, leave. And never come back. I knew we would see eye to eye. I winked at him, bye, and with that I ran away, disappearing inside the busy streets behind the school district, leaving a very angry and disturbed old man behind. Now back to my real mission, finding Akira, helping him recover his memories, and then, killing life? No, that doesn't sound right. Oh well, one step at a time, one step at a time. Paka POV, hesitation was something Azula didn't have, at least according to Iroh. His description of her was that of a monster, ruthless, uncaring, unforgiving, a product of her father, and yet I saw her hesitate. I saw emotion behind her eyes, and it wasn't what I expected. When she threatened to kill the kids in the school district just to escape, I felt her words had no real weight behind them. She was simply baiting me, and I happily took the bait. Betting on the fact Iroh had been wrong, I decided to let her go. Maybe she was on her own path of redemption, one that was already changing her, from a remorseless killer to a human. I was unsure what would have happened if I didn't allow her to escape, but a part of me was sure she would have found another way to get a way out, not involving civilians. I wonder if Akira has something to do with her being so different, I wondered out loud. I suppose time will tell how much Akira and her had changed, and if my assessment was correct or not. She was right though, I chuckled. I am getting too old for this. If only Akira had stayed, he would have made the perfect replacement for my role in the tribe. God knows I need to retire. Chapter 104. After my troubling loss of consciousness, and Vaatu helping me out, I decided to take a walk. I felt like I needed to clear my head. Shit was getting complicated, and frankly, I just needed to breathe. Out of the overprotective reach of my two friends. As I walked through the unforgiving ice-cold tundra, I tried to figure out who and why would one of the primordials target me. It seemed a bit out of the norm. Why would an immortal being bother to manipulate me? The only reason I could think of was that whoever was pulling the strings to erase my memory wanted something only I could provide. Now the question was what? What did I have to offer that would push one of them to manipulate me? This brought another question. While I didn't like the primordials, at least the majority of them, I wouldn't have been against helping them if the help in question wasn't something like killing myself, which means, whatever the primordial wanted me to do, he knew I would be against it. But even then, why erase an ex-girlfriend from my head? With so much knowledge inside my head, why specifically he or she decided to erase Azula? Was it perhaps that Azula would have been the sole reason for me to not help them? It seemed unlikely, but so far I didn't find any other logical conclusion. And while this minor discovery of my condition was a big step, it solved nothing, it simply brought upon me more questions. Why would an immortal being be interested in my dating life? I couldn't think of a single logical, plausible reason for that to happen. You haven't changed a bit, I heard someone giggle, her voice coming from a small cave a few meters away from where I was currently sitting, her melodic voice sounding familiar yet unknown. I am having a rough day, week, month, I'm having a rough month. Now, please be kind and fuck off, I sighed. I really didn't want to fight whoever the Northern Water Tribe had sent for me, right now I wanted answers. Welcome to the club, the yet-to-be-identified girl snorted. Let me guess, you woke up to find out some memories were missing, and now here you are asking yourself why? Why you? If she didn't have my attention before, she had it now. I jumped to my feet and growled, get out of the cave, or I will bring the cave down on you. Always so rough, the girl giggled, slowly walking out of the cave. Hello. Once she was completely outside, I studied her for a second, giving her a long scrutinizing look. My name is Azula, your ex. Pleased to meet you, she chuckled. The headache returned like a bullet drilling into my skull, and once again the world around me started to fade, as I struggled to keep myself awake. Deep within I could hear Vatu yelling at me, but I couldn't make out what he was saying, only that he sounded alarmed. The girl that had proclaimed herself as Azula ran to me. If I knew this was going to happen, I would have let you know who I was slowly. I hate spirits, Azula. My ex, who I didn't remember, said, her face showing something akin to worry and anger at the same time. Do you need medical attention? She inquired, and I chuckled. Maybe. I struggled to respond. Right now my body was once again fighting a full shutdown. I could feel the pain pulsating inside my skull. With no real idea what to do, I felt the girl drag me to the cave she was in before I made her come out. Once inside, she started to keep me warm with her fire bending. I'm not used to mood like this, Azula chuckled humorlessly. I always have a plan, but all of this, I have been improvising each and every step, and look where it got me, an almost catatonic Akira, and a bunch of Water Nation soldiers chasing me. Being good is not easy, so, care to fill the voids for me? I chuckled, my head on her lap, unable to move beyond really minimal movement. I will assume you are asking how we started dating? Azula smiled, her brows rising up in amusement as I nodded. Yep, maybe that will help, I chuckled, pain reminding me why I shouldn't laugh. I mean, at least I know I have a good standard. I had to admit she was very pretty. Well, I suppose it all started with you bumping into me, Azula started. That little incident led to us having a duel, where for the first time in my life I learned how it felt to be overpowered. How did me bumping into you lead to us fighting? I asked, a small smile forming in my face. Well, I asked you to kneel and kiss my feet, and you didn't oblige, Azula sighed, and I chuckled. Too kinky for our first meeting, don't you think? I snorted. Haha, maybe, Azula nodded. After my defeat I developed a crush. No, I think the term is an obsession with you, and much to my pleasant surprise you accepted my feelings. I see. I wondered what led to our breakup. Everything was going great, but you were keeping a secret from me, and the day you decided to tell me, I reacted less than good, and that made you take me to a place where they deleted my sense of self, giving me a chance to have my mother and a normal father, Azula said, her voice carrying more weight now. At first I thought it was you, who decided to destroy everything I was, but that weird spirit enlightened me otherwise. What? I asked. You were being manipulated to destroy me, Azula muttered. By who? I asked once again. By life, Azula answered with a grim look. Chapter 105. I don't know how many hours I spent talking with Azula, my ex-girlfriend who was, thanks to outside forces, virtually a stranger to me, and yet I didn't feel she was lying. In fact, It was somewhat fun to hear her talk about our time together, however brief that was. Little by little as her stories grew deeper in meaning I started to notice my headache was slowly going away, and what once crippled me was not at much an annoyance. For what is worth, sorry for erasing your memories, I apologized. I needed that reset. Thanks to that I was able to see things from another perspective. I was able to understand things that once were foreign to me. Azula smiled. I learned what it meant to love a sibling, and what it was to be loved by my parents. The old me would laugh at that sentiment, but I'm not the old me anymore, am I? She laughed. I wouldn't know. So far I only know this version of you, I chuckled. Funny, Azula rolled her eyes at me. Now, from what the Mother of Faces told me, life will act as soon as she notices I made contact with you, which it could be at any moment really. I sighed. I really don't know what to tell you. I have no idea if I can fight a primordial, I admitted. Sounds about right, Azula replied. I didn't expect you to defeat the metaphysical manifestation of life, so what was your idea? I inquired. Political games could be our answer, Azula smiled. We could convince another primordial to help us. They are bound to be equally matched. That's an idea, but how would we do that? An idea that will not work, a powerful voice commanded. The force it carried was similar to that of the Mother of Faces. I have worked too hard to restore the natural balance of things for you to ruin it. I turned around to see Crowley, my raven, the one that came and went, standing in front of us. Chaos and order must reunite, Crowley said. No, that wasn't Crowley, that was life. Our ultimate enemy is a raven? Azula commented. Great, a very unique animal, Life chuckled. Out of all the primordials, or any spirit for that matter, I was the first one to feel you. I felt when you were dropped into this world. I didn't manage to feel who made you, but I felt you, and without noticing I grew ever curious, so I studied you. Your mind was filled with knowledge, most of it protected by who created you, but the little I managed to extract for your mind was marvelous. From your mind I learned about what I assumed were fictional creatures, lions, tigers, ravens, creatures so different to ours but so systematically similar I couldn't help but create them. Life chuckled, still looking like Crowley. That sounds... I couldn't finish what I was trying to say. I was so far extremely creeped out. But that curiosity soon turned into realization. The day we fixed you, I learned so much more. Our future was dark. The world would never be how it was supposed to be. Life laughed, so I acted. I pushed you to act. It wasn't easy. Your will was like an impenetrable wall, but all walls eventually fell down. You manipulated me since then? I asked, anger building up. As someone that is officially crazy, I tell you, you need some help. Azula smirked, but like me, she was keeping her distance. I suppose, Life admitted with a chuckle, and yes, I pulled the strings of your story so far. It wasn't easy. I had to wait like a predator for you to lower your absurdly good mental defenses, but no matter how good you were, you still were a human, and you see humans are at their most vulnerable when in pain, so as you took the tests that my fellow primordials gave you, I stepped aside letting Kindred deal with you. While I whispered into your head, go to Vaatu, until eventually you thought it was your idea to go to him. This bitch, Vaatu growled, startling me for a second. I hadn't had the pleasure of hearing his rants for hours since I met Azula. What is your end goal? I was tired of her long monologue. I am getting there, Life stated. Aren't you wondering why I wanted you to become the Dark Avatar? She asked, and she was right. I wanted to know. Yes, I nodded. Well, because you would weaken Vaatu, Life stated. You are chaotic, but also in control, bringing Vaatu to a more manageable level. You see, if I were to reunite Vaatu and Rava at that point, chaos would simply rule for all eternity, but if I even the odds, things would go back to their natural state, and that's why you created Crowley, to observe my progress. I narrowed my eyes at her. Yes, but fear not, your animal friend does indeed exist. When I don't use his body he is free. Life replied. I don't understand. Azula hissed. If all you wanted was to weaken the spirit of chaos, then why did you force him to forget me? Why did you manipulate him to make me forget? Oh that, well, you were in my way, Life answered. You see, there is nothing more chaotic than love. You can't find love in order. you only find it through chaos, that feeling that drives most insane. To do things they would never do for a complete stranger is pure and absolute chaos, and the more time he spent with you the stronger Vatu became, so I forced the events of your breakup to avoid failure. Did this bitch call me Cupid? Vatu growled. I think she called you a succubus, or the male equivalent, because apparently you eat love, I inwardly replied, enraging the chaotic spirit even more. Alas, none of that worked now. Life sighed. I can feel your memories building themselves back up. With each headache, your mind is truly a masterpiece. Whoever made it was very thorough. If I had to say, in a week or two you will recover what I took from you, and what my sister took, so will you leave us be? I asked. No. I will kill you, and complete what I started, Life chuckled. That's it, I'm burning the bird, Azula stated, throwing a massive torrent of fire at Crowley, one that I stopped with earthbending. What are you doing? She is controlling my in and out pet, and I refuse to burn him to death. And even if you killed this unique bird, it wouldn't have changed anything, Life stated, calm like a river. I am everywhere, I cannot be killed. Don't mind if we try, I shot back. If you want any semblance of a chance you must fight her in the spirit world, and here, her realm she's unstoppable, but in the spirit realm she is just another spirit. Vatu informed me. I am not going back with Rava. I have grown accustomed to my life inside your head, and I will kill this egomaniacal bitch if I have to. Chapter 106. Vatu was right. If I wanted to have a chance to win, I had to fight Life out of her realm of control, so without waiting for her to take the initiative, I called Cheshire to create a portal to the spiritual world and grabbed Azula, jumping into the portal. The sudden jump into the spiritual world and my immediate action surprised Azula. At this, she simply stared at me for a long second before asking, "Do you have any plan?" she asked. I didn't know what to say. At the moment, my plan was to improvise until I figured out how to kill the metaphysical manifestation of life. It's not a plan, it's more of an idea, I muttered, looking down. So we are just gonna winged, her mouth curved into a smile. I suppose we are, I smirked. How different things are, Azula added, a frown forming on her face. I have never been without a plan this long. Well, I'm sure we will figure something out, I sighed, not really sure if I believed that myself, but one of us had to believe. A wise move, coming to the realm where ironically I am on my weakest, a voice behind us commented. Life had finally arrived. So, we fight, how ironic, I added with a tight-lipped smile. Fight, how barbaric of you, Life remarked, amused for some unknown reason. I said I was going to kill you, but not that I was going to fight you. There is a big difference in two. I somehow feel insulted, Azula spoke, her eyes narrowing at the spirit in front of us. So, how exactly do you plan on killing us? I asked. Maybe I could use her own overconfidence against her. I control life, and while it's not my realm, I have good enough control to decide who gets to have my blessing. Life smiled, meaning the moment I decide you two are unworthy of my blessing, your lives end. I am having an awesome day, Azula muttered. So, it was good while it lasted. Life sang, God, I hated the bitch, now die. I closed my eyes for a second and nothing happened. I waited a few more seconds and nothing. Inferring with our realm, it's not something we will approve of, a disembodied husky voice growled, a growl I was all too familiar with. We will not tolerate this Gaia, added a honeyed sweet melodic voice. There was no mistaking, Kindred was here. Kindred, Life spoke, her lips pressed together in annoyance. Is there a reason you are interfering with my work? She inquired, eyes narrowing, her gaze going behind us. You are taking our prey. From the shadows, the wolf appeared, baring his teeth in anger. We do not decide who is born, but we get to decide who dies. The lamb followed close behind the wolf, her voice calm like a river. Always so righteous, never breaking any rules. You realize that if you don't allow me to end their life with my realm, they will die in combat, right? Life inquired with an exasperated sigh. That is up to you, and him, but interfering with our domain to get what you want, Lamb leaned forward, her furry hands going to her quiver, will result in our wrath, the wolf growled, shaking the very earth beneath us. I will take a wild guess and say, these two are the personifications of death, right? Azula inquired with a soft whisper. Yep, I nodded with a half-smile. They killed me hundreds of times. Do I want to know? Azula asked, tilting her in confusion. No, I replied. So be it. If I have to dirty my hands with blood to see my goal be fulfilled, then I shall gladly do it, Life stated. Is that good enough for you, kindred? It is, Lamp replied, turning her gaze over me. You are not destined to die today. Don't make us start our hunt today. And with that, both the lamb and the wolf disappeared. All right then, Life sneered, lifting her hand up, her palm aimed at us. Let's end this charade, shall we? Energy, like I had never felt before, started to gather on her palm, creating a sphere of spiritual energy, and doubts began to surge within me. Could I really beat her? If so, how? What I felt coming from her was leagues above my avatar state. Isn't this a bit unfair? A bunny appeared in front of Life, startling her. I think it's quite unfair to kill him without giving him a shot. Gaia, that bunny, I recognized him. He was the only primordial that didn't mind fuck me that time. Soul, your interference is getting on my nerves, Life stated, her fists shaking in anger. He is also a primordial? Azula asked, and I nodded. Of what? Carrots? Of the energy within the spirits, Soul chuckled, but I do like carrots, so I guess of that too. I snorted at that. So, now what? I asked. Now he leaves. Life fumed, clenching her jaw. No, I don't, Soul snorted. I won't let you use my realm to fight them. I'm not using your realm, Life replied, her lips pressed into a thin line. Oh, then what was that you were about to use to kill them? Soul inquired, his voice flat and emotionless. This is ridiculous. Life frowned, narrowing her eyes at Soul in anger. Ridiculous or not, it's my realm, and I get to decide who uses it and who doesn't, Soul stated, crossing his arms. So every one of you will now interfere with what's right? Life barked. Why? Because, you are not being fair, Soul snapped. As primordials, we have to be impartial. We can't interfere with human nor other spirits, we can merely guide them, but that's it. You have completely disregarded what we stand for, and now you are using your powers to fight a human that by no means will have a chance against your power, even with Vatu inside of him. I won't stop, Life stated. Then let's make this a fair fight, shall we? Soul hissed, his form changing, and I couldn't help but wonder why was he so mad with Life, why was he so eager to protect me? Chapter 107, Soul grew in size, his form taking a more malevolent tone, his eyes glowing red like a murderous beast ready to rip his prey apart limb by limb. So would you rather fight me? Or fight them in a fair fight? Soul asked, baring his teeth at her. Very well, Life replied, her lips closely pressed together in annoyance. I will give them a fair chance at this. Very well, Soul nodded with a fake smile. I will see. So the challenge is fair. For the moment, they are free to go, right? He asked her, not really expecting her answer or approval. So much for a human, you barely know, Life added exasperated, much to Soul's amusement. You are free to go. Soul turned to look at us, ignoring the glare he was getting from his sister. I will be contacting when the time to fight her comes. She took his memory. Azula spoke, crossing her arms in a defensive stance. He deserves to remember. A small request. I can easily fulfill. Soul smiled, eyes shining in amusement at how little Azula feared them, or rather, how well she hid her fear. Now go, and be sure to have your new friends with you. The spirit winked at us, and soon we found ourselves outside the spiritual world. I stood up from the ground, not really sure what would await me later on. What did Soul mean by your new friends? Did he mean Azula and the spirits? Were they going to help me win against Life? Do you remember? Azula asked, her eyes narrowing in something akin to hope. I blinked suddenly, realizing I now knew who she was. I mean, for real, I remembered her naked, her tears while we fought. I remembered it all. Yes, I do. I smiled. Good, Azula smiled and smacked me in the face with a powerful slap. That's for lying and for resetting my brain. She hummed. Auk, but in all honesty, I expected more, I chuckled. Well, that was just your part. Life, on the other hand, she will burn for what she did, Azula roared, flames bursting around her, melting the snow into a steamy explosion. Fair enough, I nodded. Life deserved to die. Alas, we couldn't kill her, but that didn't mean we couldn't humiliate her. So, who was that last spirit? He seemed too eager to help you, and if I have learned anything these last few weeks was not to trust them, Azula stated, her eyes closing and her mouth opening into a big yawn. I really need to sleep, been kinda paranoid with life being our enemy, so I have only been sleeping 2 hours a day, and not all at once for the last week. I smiled. You can sleep back at the camp. I'll be on guard. I offered. Sounds like a plan then, Azula nodded, beaming with happiness. So, about us, where do we stand? I'm not sure, I smiled. I think part of our attraction was the fact we were both kinda broken, and we simply fit together, so I'm not sure where we stand, I sighed. That sounds about right, Azula giggled, but, in the meantime, I suppose we can be friends. She winked at me, pulling me into an unexpected hug. You did more than anyone has ever done for me. You gave a chance to live without madness, albeit the method was questionable. I will always thank you for showing me there are more things than power. So, how do you feel about your father? I asked. Norin is a great man, a very loving husband and a very caring father, Azula answered, a smile slowly forming on her face. I miss them, but someone had to save you. I meant Ozai. I coughed, and Azula punched me playfully. That man barely gave me any time of his day, and when he did, there was no love behind his actions, Azula hissed. I want in your plan to take him down. I want to see the look on his face when everything he ever worked for is burning to the ground with my flames. Huh, very well, welcome aboard, I laughed. It sure will be poetic to see him wonder why you betray him. Azula chuckled, mischievous amusement sparkling in her eyes. If he asks, I will tell him, Father, if only you had given me the dollhouse I wanted with the accessories I wanted, I wouldn't have fallen into the dark side. My descent is your fault, I laughed. Oh God, please do. I would pay to see that. Very well. Azula rolled her eyes at me, her lips forming a cheeky smile. Where is your camp anyways? She asked. A few miles to the east, I pointed. It should take us half an hour if we ride the snow. Then let's go, Azula commanded. Redeemed or not, she was still bossy. Life or Gaia POV, kindred, soul and the truth had interfered in my plans. Even that face giving the treacherous spirit I have for a sister betrayed me, and now they wanted me to offer the human a fair chance. Why couldn't they understand? The world needed to be back in order. Rava and Vatu were not meant to be separated, they were meant to fight each other for eternity. Vatu eating imaginary food, and Rava always sleeping, the world needed them to fulfill their purposes. Duties they had neglected for thousands of years, and yet, why was I the only one that saw? Forcing them to be together was the only way to restore what once was lost. I think we have two options, Soul smiled, as he hadn't threatened me a few minutes ago. 1, we can have the human complete a challenge, or 2, if you are so insisting on fighting him, one of us can momentarily merge with him to give him the tools to fight you. A challenge or a duel, there wasn't much of an option. If I selected a challenge, they would pick something he could easily complete, but in a duel, no matter if one of my siblings is inside of him, I have eons of experience, something he lacks. After all, power is meaningless without skill. I pick a duel, it has been decided, a challenge it is. Were they ignoring me? I said a duel. If he wins you will leave him and the human world alone for 100,000 years. If he loses, you are free to pursue your ideals, the truth stated, and so, the last game started, one that apparently I had no choice in. Chapter 108, with life quite literally on my ass about how she wanted to restore the balance of things and my memory fully restored, I decided it was time to move forward with my plans of eliminating Ozai once and for all, at least while I waited for life and the other spirits to state the terms of her challenge. In other terms, I had to act fast, because I had no idea how quickly the primordials were going to decide what challenge was fair under their peculiar perspective of things for me to take on, and considering my luck so far, it wasn't going to be something easy for me, probably life-threatening, if not downright suicidal. So with that in mind I started to move the pieces I had laid on the board so far. with the power I had amassed, taking down Ozai was going to be super easy, barely an inconvenience, or so I thought. Hours after returning to the camp and introducing Azula to you, Agni, and Sakura, the spirit laid their terms. The terms of the challenge were simple, yet they put me at a great disadvantage, so much for them making it fair. Then again, their challenge was considerably better than facing life, a primordial that would stomp me to another universe, so in a way, they had helped me. As for the challenge, well, they would take away the bending elements I had mastered, and to add more difficulty as it was needed, they also took away any abilities Vaatu had given me. My task? Face Ozai with nothing but my wits and physical might, alone. If I won, life would leave me be. If I lost, well, I'd rather not think about it. This meant I could not use any of the spirits I had brought into the living world. In fact, one of the conditions life had put was for them to remain in the spirit realm until I finished the challenge. So, now, here I was with nothing. I seriously doubted my sword skills or wits were going to be enough to face the big bad idiot, whose power now thanks to life towered over mine, and the worst part was, they expected me to win, alone. I suppose it's time for some ingenuity, because any other way, I would die at the hands of the biggest egomaniac in this world. I no longer had the power to take on the guy like he was a fly, so I had to consider every element around this challenge and how to tackle it effectively. Ozai was a bender, and benders were heavily reliant to mid-range combat, with a spice of hand-to-hand combat to balance things out, which normally leaves them at their weakest when their enemy is too close, so if I took that little fact and Ozai's overconfidence, I maybe had a chance to win this challenge. But unfortunately that was a chance that I had ruined by revealing myself as the new avatar the last time I saw the Fire Lord. If the man had a single functional brain cell, he would take my little stunt as a warning, meaning that because of me, he would now be more wary of the threats around his throne, taking things and threats more to their real value, instead of diminishing them with his pride, meaning, milking his pride was not as profitable as it would have been. Fortunately for me, there were other emotions I could exploit on the man, among them his anger. The man was easy to anger, prone to it. While his fire bending was explosive and quite lethal, and his anger would only increase his fire output and therefore its lethality, it would also make it easier to read his movements, and thanks to that it would give me more control of the fight. Of course this strategy was borderline suicidal, one wrong step, and I would be a goner, so if I were to try and capitalize on his anger I would have to have a well-planned strategy, and a few contingency plans in case I failed to control the situation as I wanted it to go. As for my weaponry, now that I had no bending, I had to resort to plebeian methods of combat that, if handled well, were as lethal if not more than bending. Things like poisons, explosives, traps and more, were the weapons I would have at my disposal to deal with Ozai, meaning in night terms, I would have to fight as dirty as possible, by using misdirection and lies to trick the Fire Lord. So for this fight, I would have to be hundreds of steps ahead of Ozai, in every single possible angle, from where we would fight so that I could booby-trap the entire area, to how the fight should play out, from beginning to end, counting every little detail, from my hits, to my fails, all leading to his demise. I had to foresee it all, and act accordingly, and with Vaatu by my side, I had a chance. It's as they say, 2 heads think better than one. And while the primordial spirits made for the duration of this challenge nothing more than a voice inside my head, his thousands of years of experience, and his access to my mind would help me out more than anything. Why? Well, Vaatu not only had access to every single thing I had seen in my previous life, but to information I don't think I ever saw, making my head a never-ending library of bizarre information, full and complete for Vaatu's access. Maybe this was part of the gift the being that brought me here had given me, a head full of knowledge that needed someone like Vaatu to decipher, and if the knowledge in my head wasn't enough, there was always the spirit library. After all, right now, knowledge was my weapon, and patience was my poison. Chapter 109. After planning for a bit with Vaatu how to proceed with this ridiculously difficult challenge, I decided to face Ozai with a few weapons in my arsenal, some poisons and lots of misdirection and tricks. My strategy was simple, tiring him out in close range, using poisons and weapons as supplements for what I had lost. In my strategy, all I needed to do was cut Ozai enough so that his body would inevitably succumb to the poisons I had and drop to the ground dead. This of course was not going to be easy. With Firebender's poisons was tricky idea, because they basically had a massively high tolerance to them and other foreign substances known to invade their bodies, thanks to their bending that would passively burn away whatever it was affecting them. This, of course, it's not as effective as many would like, because if the poison or toxin is strong enough, there is no fire within that will stop its natural purpose of spreading and killing its victim. Now, this didn't guarantee me I would actually manage to poison Ozai, because like I had said, poisons were a tricky subject. The use of poisons on knives, swords and other melee weapons was very unreliable and not as powerful as many would think, if I had to say. It was more of a fantasy myth created by others than anything. Its usefulness was at best questionable because there was no real guarantee the weapon would stay in the wound long enough to deliver a lethal dose of poison inside the body. Which is why, my plan was to cut him as much as possible with as many poison weapons. Why did I use poisons if they were unreliable? Well, if I was to fight him with melee weapons, I might as well use everything at my disposal. One can't never know what will give me the necessary edge to kill Ozai. As for my weapons, I had a short but useful variety of weapons that included but were not limited to throwing knives, explosives, swords, knuckle busters, and a fireproof whip I bought on the Fire Nation, and more. These of course were only a little part of plans, because while I had to take Ozai down alone, that didn't mean I had to do it, well, alone. The challenge was to defeat him on a one-on-one, which was hard, but it would only be infinitely harder if I fought him and his army alone, downright impossible. So, what if I lured him into a battlefield I had the best odds to win? What if I had someone to lure him for me? Azula would play a very important role in this. In my plan, she would go back to her dad, and make it so he has to fight me on my terms without him knowing that, preferably in a place with little space, and lots of water to mitigate his fire, or maybe one with lots and lots of explosives, so that he could not use his fire bending at all. A battlefield where the odds would be stacked in my favor. Do you think he will be suspicious of you? I asked Azula, who simply shook her head with a scoff. He is, worse than I was. For him the idea of someone betraying him, it's foreign, impossible. Azula chuckled bitterly. He feels everyone follows him, because he is the chosen one to rule this world as a god. I see. I sighed. By the way, is there any room or place full of explosives where I could fight Ozai? Many, but I doubt he will be that stupid to not see through such an obvious plot. Azula hummed. But I could possibly trick him into another place like the Royal Armory, and from there you could drag the battle to the explosive area, trapping him into a hand-to-hand duel. She smiled. I doubt he would see through that. Once he starts fighting, he forgets about anything that is not incinerating his enemy. That could work. I was good at dodging. Let's do that. NPOV, a game of life. I had no idea what it meant, but I felt I had to do something. That dream, where I saw the other Avatar fighting on his own against all odds, for not only his future but mine, because somehow they were both connected. It was scary, unreal, simply unbelievable, and yet a part of me told me I had to go and help him. I'm going to the Fire Nation, I told my friends, who looked at me like I was crazy. You have yet to master the elements, Katara stated. If you go now and lose, everything will be lost. I'm going with you, Twinkle Toes. Toph smiled. I don't know what's worrying you, but I will kick his ass with your ass, she declared, sporting a confident smirk. Toph, Katara is right, Sokka sighed, rubbing his temples. I know you are having bad dreams, Aang, and they always have. The guy we want to recruit, but going there, just because of a dream is a bad idea. You don't understand. I muttered. I have a feeling that if he dies, I will be next. Something inside me, a voice, keeps telling me to help Vaatu. Vaatu? Toph inquired. Who the heck is Vaatu? I think that's the other Avatar's name. I really didn't know for sure. I see his face, and the voice whispering help him, help Vaatu, over and over again, or we'll be next. Life must be stopped. Life must be. Aang, I think you need to relax, and I stopped Katara mid-sentence. I'm the Avatar, and this is my choice to make. I understand your concern, but every part of me is telling me I have to go and help Vaatu, and I will with or without you, I declared, and if I die trying, then so be it. I have escaped from my destiny for far too long, and this is a calling I cannot ignore. Chapter 110. Azula's plan had worked almost too well, with her dad welcoming her with open arms, with no suspicion whatsoever. I mean, why would he be suspicious of the one that has followed his every order until now? He had no reason to do so. As for Ozai, he was in bad shape, good for me, bad for him though. He had various wounds over his body that limited his movement a bit, and all thanks to my last visit where I was a bit too stupid not to end him, meaning this fight was already looking less complicated for me, but not by much. He was still a fire-breathing human, while I was now a simple human with some physically enhanced abilities normal to this world, meaning while I was currently better than him, physically speaking, he still had the power to end me in one strike should I make even one mistake. But, regardless of that, I was happy to see he wasn't in his best shape, broke from our last encounter, leaving him with a weakness I would exploit to the absolute limit. But for now I had to wait, in the shadows of the royal palace until Azula had moved her pieces around enough to trick Ozai into going where I wanted him to be, where then I would try my absolute best to kill the man once and for all, ending this stupid challenge once and for all. As the days passed and I continued to explore the castle, I noticed that someone else had entered the castle the same way I had, which was unexpected. Not many would dare to infiltrate the castle just because. So, who was it? My answer who soon come in the shape of a blade going for my throat that I barely managed to dodge. Zuko. So you didn't kill my sister, Zuko stated, and I couldn't help but notice he was wearing his blue spirit armor. Why though? What are you doing here? Bending over for my dad? No, and no, I answered his questions. I came here to kill him, like you. It didn't take me long to understand what was going on. Zuko had already deserted his dad, and had come to kill him instead of going to join Team Avatar. I see. Zuko eyed me for a second, putting his blades back into their sheaths. He's mine. Normally I would say, go for it, but I either kill him, or I die. I sighed. So, no, he's mine. You either. What? Zuko asked, with a confused tone. Spirit shit, I answered. Right, I forgot you are the second Avatar, Zuko replied. So, if you don't kill him you will die? He asked and I nodded. That's rough. Here, let's make a deal. I kill him, you deal with anyone that tries to enter, and you get the throne deal? I offered. The last thing I wanted was to waste energy with Zuko on a fight that would inevitably weaken me a lot. And is Azula okay with that? The Fire Prince asked in disbelief. She no longer craves the throne. I nodded. She's in on this. Very well, there is not much I can't do to stop you anyway. Zuko sighed, and I chuckled. For the duration of this quest, I have lost my bending. I chuckled as I saw his eyes open as wide as possible. Are you suicidal? Zuko hissed. Without bending he will crush you. I thought you hated me. I laughed. I hated the idea of you outshining me, like Azula had done all her life, Zuko replied with mild embarrassment, but back to the point. How in the name of Agni do you pretend to take on the strongest firebender in the world with nothing but a pair of swords? I eyed his blades and he blushed. I was not pretending to use them against him. Look, I either die trying or die not trying at all. See conundrum? I sighed. It's not like I needed him to remind me how stupidly unfair this match was. There must be an angle, something you haven't seen, Zuko muttered. If I learned something from my uncle is that spiritually speaking means what it means literally. What? I asked, tilting my head in confusion. Had drinking his own bad tea affected him so much? I mean, whatever the challenge is, maybe it's not supposed to be taken so literally, Zuko elaborated. What exactly did they tell you? He asked, and, oh God, I couldn't believe I was even entertaining the idea of telling him. Oh well. What do I have to lose? Well, with accurate detail, I told Zuko what the spirits had told me, and I will never live this one down, but Zuko found a loophole. They said every power I had mastered, which meant every element but the one I had yet to use in any shape, air. Perhaps if you unlock your airbending, the fight would be more on equal terms. Then again, I'm only speculating. I have no idea if they left you with any bending whatsoever, Zuko sighed, but it's a start, right? Maybe, but still. I might as well have no bending. Airbending has been my Achilles tendon for as long as I have been the Dark Avatar, I replied. Oh! Zuko muttered. What would my uncle say? Think, Zuko, think. Oh! Akita, to find your power within yourself, you first have to find yourself within your enemy. Only then you will find the truest version of yourself. For days I trained with now friendly Zuko, after he offered to help me out for no other reason but to honor his uncle, and I accepted. What the hell? I had nothing to lose, so day and night we trained, not only with the sword but also trying to see if his theory was right about airbending, and so far, nothing. Our fruitless training continued without a point, beyond increasing my swordsmanship to a more adequate level. Until we saw a very familiar animal flying towards us, Aang's bison. I sure hope Aang and his idiotic pacifism are still together, I muttered, realizing I would lose hard should he try to fight me. Me too, Zuko muttered. Zuko! Vaatu, did Aang call me Vaatu? Tell the bald brat I do not want to talk to him. I am trying to unlock some power within or anything to win this duel. I refuse to be one with Rava once again. I like it here. His name is Akira, Zuko said, crossing his arms, and he's with me. Seriously, Zuko, why the attitude? Not a good selling point at all, and with Zuko things are not going well, but I can save it. I am not looking for a fig. I was cut mid-sentence when an ice blade coming from the top Appa almost cut my arm, but it seems you are. Katara! Aang shouted, we can here to help him, not kill him. He almost killed you. Katara hissed, I wanted to do the same, almost kill him. She's a keeper, I muttered sarcastically, making Zuko snort. Who would have thought he had a sense of humor? Maybe this was the real him when honor wasn't on his ass. How did you find me anyway? I asked. Before Aang could reply, Toph said, Twinkle Toes here just followed his heart, quite literally. I eyed the monk, who nodded in response. I see. Well, that wasn't weird at all. Well, here is the thing. I can't get help. I either do this alone, or die. I sighed. Not really, Rava spoke, as Aang spontaneously entered the Avatar state, losing control of his body in the process. The beginning of a new cycle. Even with Aang's help, airbending proved to be useless, which meant I was back to square one. Not that it saddened me much, I expected this result. So the plan started. With a few extra factors, Aang and Zuko would stop anyone from interfering, alongside Azula, while Toph, Katara and Sokka would destroy the Fire Nation armory in case I failed, to give the rebels an advantage. As for me, I was waiting for the Fire Lord in the northern caves. I had decided not to fight him with explosives nearby in the case he had, like me, managed to improve on his fire defensively. So, here I was. Waiting, sharpening my weapons, going over all the possible scenarios and how to deal with them. One wrong move, and not only life would win, but the Fire Lord. It was quite poetic, to be honest, and a bit unfair at the same, taking all my bending when waterbending was a gift from whoever had brought me to this world. Oh well, I will fight like the human I originally was, with my fists, mostly because the technology in this world cannot provide me with an AK-47 just yet. Tick, tock, little by little I started to hear the voices of Azula and Ozai approaching. It was time. Time to either die or win this challenge. What is the meaning of this, Azula? Ozan growled, as soon as he entered the cave. At this, Azula kicked her father into the cave, and jumped back, doing a flip while shooting a lightning strike to the entrance, effectively trapping us inside. Go to hell. Azula winked devilishly, and the only entrance to the cave was closed by the debris, result of her attack. Ozai, I sighed, today one of us died. I looked around one more time, seeing the natural pillars around the cave, feeling the damp atmosphere of the cave, and the little space he would have to move. I will deal with my treacherous daughter after I kill you, Ozai sneered. This time you won't win so easily, ain't that the truth? Perhaps, I chuckled, unsheathing my poisoned blade. We will find out soon enough. Primordials POV, Akira and Ozai were about to face off in one of the caves inside the Fire Nation. The area was wide enough for the two of them to fight, but not wide enough Ozai would have a clear advantage. Akira looked around for a brief second and then turned his attention back to Ozai. Let's end this. Ozai rushed at the Akira, propulsing his feet with pure fire bending. Akira stood still waiting for the Fire Lord to be close enough, and once Ozai was a few inches from him, Akira dipped under his attack as Ozai was about to reach him and in quick motion slashed the Fire Lord upwards with his blade. Ozai dodged this attack, maneuvering around Akira with his fire propulsion. Akira was quick to catch on and slashed in a circular motion, cutting Ozai on the cheek ever so lightly. "Am I a joke to you?" Ozai hissed, his index finger touching the small wound. "You think you can take me without any bending? We'll see how long you keep this bravado, child, till you die." Akira chuckled, going back into position, his right hand on his blade, while his left reached to his pocket. "Now you see me, now you don't." At that, Akira threw something to the floor that exploded into a thick screen of smoke around them. Ozai at this scoffed, but before he had the chance to move or do anything, a blade came out of the smoke. In shock, Ozai sidestepped backwards just enough to dodge the blade completely out of instinct. Akira was so close there, the blade passed a hair's breadth from Ozai's throat. "Insolent!" Ozai roared in anger, and before Akira could move out of the way, Ozai swiftly kicked Akira in the stomach with devastating strength, using his fire propulsion to speed his kick to unnatural heights, delivering in the process some minor degree burns to Akira while knocking the wind out of him and stunning him for a brief moment. Fortunately for Akira, he managed to recover from the attack and started to move before the Fire Lord ended the battle, running around the natural pillars of the cave, throwing knives at Ozai while using the environment as a shield. A smart tactic, one that Ozai didn't want to indulge in. "You will die for your hubris," Ozai stated, flying towards Akira in a straight line. Akira took this chance to throw some small explosives at the Fire Lord, effectively blinding him for a second, where Akira stabbed him with his last knife on torso by throwing the knife with all his strength. "You little..." Ozai growled, pulling the knife off his body, before blasting a torrent of fire towards Akira, who barely managed to hide behind a pillar. "You won't win. Not using your bending, it's just making this harder for you," Ozai shouted. "Last time I crushed you too fast, so I thought, why not make a day out of this?" Akira taunted as he treated the burns on his chest with some ointment to reduce the pain. "This way I actually get to enjoy the battle," he added. "Ah!" Ozai fell right into his game, and rushed at him in blind rage for insulting his pride. Akira smiled at this, putting the cream back on his pouch while putting on some goggles and a mask and grabbing what we assumed was another smoke bomb, and once Ozai reached him, he immediately threw the bomb at the ground. This bomb, however, was different, because for some reason Ozai seemed to be in pain, specifically around the face. "Welcome to the pepper strategy, moron," Akira whispered to his ear, injecting the Fire Lord with something as he tried to cut the Fire Lord's head. Ozai, however, noticed right on time and ducked under the blade. Unfortunately for him, Akira was quick to adjust and moved his blade to deliver some significant dandy, cutting his right arm under his armpit, inhabilitating his right arm and his. That's the end of this tale. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you on the next series. Peace.